No, it was both. 7 on the number row. Anything organic, especially something that's directly organic like that, is going to be a bit of a challenge. So, good job on pushing it. This. I forget what was it, your section or the other section that someone asked about doing this ossuary? It was. Okay. I figured I'd give it a shot at trying to more or less block it all in inside of half an hour. I think my proportions are goofed though. Nice. I think my proportions are definitely goofed. Mm-hmm. keep it easier on yourself and just do one. Two to either size of skulls. Okay, what I need to do here. Bingo. No, let me bridge. No, it will not. That's better. The process. So if you have something specific that's giving you trouble at this point, you can just let me know and I'll either model it or take a look at what you have already or whichever floats. I think I need to do a mass weld first. Nope. Cancel. Duplicate. Don't want this stuff. Mm-hmm. Sure. Okay. So they're essentially like picture frames almost. Obviously, they're actually part of the structure itself, but it's not a structural support. It's not holding the wall up. So the little frames, it would be the same thing as if you had put like a banner with a with a little bit of a soft fold on it and hanging bars and whatever. You could easily take it out and it would still, the building's integrity wouldn't be sacrificed at all for the upper one. And then for the lower pink one, I believe the correct term is pediment. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. So not structure. It wouldn't be a structural piece. It would be an asset. Oh, and there's your ram's sword or ram's head. Cool. You can see how anytime you start modeling anything organic, especially something that's moving in all three axes, it just becomes an absolute nightmare in terms of poly count. It just explodes. You can't do anything about it. It's just the nature of what you're doing. Alrighty. So I still need to like properly weld this stuff together and do some cuts and chamfer, but I just wanted to get one of those, I don't even know what its proper term is, what you'd properly call this, obelisk from the Sedlec ossuary. Like, well, there's definitely some kind of religious symbolism to it, because there's a cherub up there with the horn, but there doesn't, to answer your question, it doesn't look like there's any kind of script on it. It's in Cheskia in Prague. I'll repost it. Sedlec ossuary. Do a little in-person reenactment of, oh, what was it? National Treasure. Fair. Same. Oops. Come on. Yup. So I mentioned last time, or at the end of last class, that I would just basically go through the process of setting all this stuff up using better decisions or better choices for my models. So that's what I plan to do, and then the end of class I'm going to take the entire idea of modular design and I'm going to apply it to something that really does require it in order to do it quickly and not absolutely destroy your poly count and your brain. So I'm going to just quickly model out a tree for you guys. You won't be required or expected to use a tree for this assignment, but you will be doing the same process later on. So I'll do it once here just to demonstrate modularity, and then I'll do it again when the assignment comes up. So the entire idea of this assignment is to get you guys working with pieces rather than large, ginormous chunks of unique geometry. So, that's going to be really difficult if it's a modern day apartment. I'm just like, sorry, I missed that first bit. Your apartment? No. The only issue with doing modern day stuff or modern setting is that most of our stuff just becomes or is basically just a box with a little bit of extrusion on it. There's no real silhouette strength to it. It's not nothing in a modern apartment is really unique. Like I'm looking around mine, and it's a bunch of boxes, cylinders. It would be hard to get a 1600 asset out of it that also has a silhouette that you can actually work with. That being said, if you want to do something a little less, religious oriented, sorry, a little more secular, I guess I should say. Someone's done something like, I can find it. It's grabbing the top edge on the cylinder. So I'll just get rid of all this stuff. So giant N-gon, poly mode, grab the N-gon. I usually just delete it right off the bat. And then I grab the top border edge and just scale it in and collapse it. So something that other people have done or students have chosen to do in the past is something along this style, which is from Sweden. It's still got that sort of aged architecture to it. You still got like stone pillars, the crown molding pieces. You don't have to go this detailed, but it might be fun. But typically this is going to have enough, elaborate style to it or enough embellishment to it that you can actually use at 1600 and still have a good silhouette. So obviously this is my floor. I'm just going to build out my main walls. And this time I am going to be smart about it, since it's a lot easier to work with pieces as opposed to a huge chunk of geometry, and having at least one piece aligned to world XYZ makes it way easier to deal with. I'm just going to make sure that my sides are divisible by 4. So 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, etc. And then take these guys. I want to make sure that's perfectly lined up with my floor piece. So rather than trying to eyeball it, I could either, since I started with the cylinder, I already know that the pivot point is completely centered. I could turn on my snaps, and they're still set to vertices snap in this case. Grab the 3 axes gizmo, so it's the circle at the base of all 3 axes. And just snap it to that center pole vertice. That'll get me perfectly on point. Or I can Alt-A, target the floor. I don't want it moving up and down, so I don't want it on the Z axis. I want it only on the X and Y. So Alt-A, click. Yeah, sure. So that will get me centered out. And then if I do that target again, so Alt-A, I've already got it positioned on X and Y. If I switch it over to Z position, so elevation up, down, I want to match my current object's minimum value or lowest value in Z, so its bottom, and align it to my target object's maximum value or its top. Helps if I actually hit maximum. So same thing, just a couple more mouse clicks. Yep. Yeah, that would work, Garrett. The sofa, the sofa and the armchairs are going to be, they're going to have a silhouette, but most of your geometry is going to be sunken into the cushions. So, like, yeah, they'll have a distinguishable silhouette, but it's just because the base object itself is so simple. I'm just thinking what you could do with that. Nope. So the environment itself, Garrett, the wood supports on the ceiling and whatnot, that's fine. Yeah, I'm fine with the environment itself. It's going to be hard to use repeating geometry or like blocks to build out the room, because again, modern architecture, modern freeform architecture, maybe you get, I see only two walls I could potentially repeat, the ones on either side of the fireplace. Everything else looks like it's, you know, either unique cuts or unique cuts or unique form to it. So this is something that I would pull elements from, but I wouldn't necessarily do the full thing. Like if you wanted to do a simplified version of Dragon's Reach, for example, and use this sort of ceiling on it, I'm not recommending Dragon's Reach as a potential source, but yeah. No problem. So I've got my stuff divisible by 4, 20 sides, so 5 sides each. Sorry, either 5 sides each, divide by 4, or grab 4 walls. It's a line on the x-axis. Delete everything else. And then I'll just turn on my angle snaps. Now, there's 2 ways to go about this, since I'm basically looking to continue or perpetuate this wall piece all the way around. I could just hold down Shift and I need 2.5 degrees on my snaps. Nope, I need even less. I need 2 degrees on my snaps. So this is why what I'm about to show you makes this a little easier. So I'm going to be using the same piece repeatedly. So in this case, I ended up with 4 wall pieces, or sorry, 4 polygons that are aligned on the x-axis. So I'm going to have this as my master copy, or I'm about to make it my master copy. I deleted everything else, so that I'm going to rebuild that cylinder just using this piece of geometry. Nope, it's just for modular design. So should probably name it. So wall piece. Holding down Shift. Nope, just use the geometry that it's already given you. So the only difference right now that I have between what I started with and what's currently there is object properties. So if I wanted to make this object have, you know, recessed walls on this side, so the little inset, and this comes back, and I want to duplicate that all the way across. So I want it, you know, over here and over here and over here. I would have to go around taking this geometry. So obviously I didn't do correct edge or polygon selections here. I'm just illustrating the process. I would have to take this off as a clone. Then I'd have to rotate it into place. Why is it not giving me parent? Why? Interesting. So I'd have to rotate it into place. This is where I change my vertices or my snaps back to 5 degrees. Move it over, get it lined up. So in this case, I can just go snaps. Snap vert to vert. Grab the original pieces, delete them, replace, re-weld, blah, 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 blah. Then when I'm getting ready to start unwrapping, so not something that you guys are expected to do, but just to illustrate how well this can work for you. If I were to go through and unwrap, and all this stuff is still unique, so editable poly is still not bolded, or is not bolded rather. Anything I do to this piece obviously does not affect this piece. Whereas right now with this cylinder that I've got going, or those wall pieces I just made, if I grab these polys, yep, no worries. A boss room, like a boss arena, yeah. Yeah, you can do that. It could be a square shape or a rectangular shape. As long as it has some axes of symmetry to it, so as long as you can, and this is more for your benefit than anything else, as long as you can go, you know, symmetry, and one side is the exact same as the other at minimum, then yeah, that works. It's just if you're working with radial symmetry like this, it's even easier because you can use only a few pieces of wall repeatedly. But yeah, sorry, one second, I accidentally closed Discord. I'm lost. There we go. So it's basically taking a piece that, or taking the general shape that you want. So in the case of if you're doing a, you know, more rectangular or a hall, number one, it's kind of nice to have some kind of even measurements so that you can break it up a little quicker. So I were to go 36 meters, and all these numbers are arbitrary. So this right now is 10 meters by 10, sorry, 10 meters by 10 meters by 36. I could say, well, I want my walls to be, you know, each section of wall to be 6 meters long. So one extra. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 times 6, 36. these end pieces, you know, maybe I'm doing something specific with them. So I'll just attach them as a new object. And then I would take these guys, delete everything else. I wouldn't worry too much about matching the floor. Worry more about having your wall pieces being able to be broken apart, or instanced in rather. But if you did have something where your floor had like tiles that you want to have represented or something along those lines, okay. So in that case you would be, then in that case you're correct. You would start with one of your basic primitives, probably dial down your number of edges substantially, and then it would be clipping stuff around. So I'm not going after any pattern, obviously. Exactly. Yep. So using the, you know, more hall-like example, make sure that you're still set to instance. Or like a, not a hall, but like a throne room or a throne, sorry, a rectangular environment. So that now you can go extrude, sorry, not extrude, inset. So maybe these aren't doors, maybe these are windows. So more of like a cathedral appearance to it. I'd be able to, exactly. So that just means that you are modeling from a volumetric object that's meant to be seen from the outside looking in. Or sorry, from, so if my fist is the object, it's anticipating that you're supposed to be looking at like this, but we're actually going to be sitting inside of it. So in both the case that I have quickly modeled out here, plus my actual one that I'm going to use, once I've got the pieces blocked out, so now I've got my windows. So maybe here I'm going to go for something like doorway, obviously. Kind of important to be able to get in here. So I'll just do a really quick inside. Yep, give me 1 second. Yep. Of course. No, I've had people hand in a fistful of pictures. Like one person did Firelink Shrine from Dark Souls 3, and their references were just their character standing in front of things inside of Dark Souls 3. I would encourage that. Yep, multiple podiums. As long as it's the same podium, it's one asset. Yep, I'm about to do that. It's right there. Go ahead. A jewel sitting on the podium? Hold on to that thought. That's one of the topics I was going to hit on. 7 on the number row, so the top number row at the top of your keyboard, will turn on your polys and verts display. It's the yellow text in the upper left. If you go to the plus icon, configure viewports, and then go down to the statistics tab, toggle them. Yep. And I usually have selections and total turned on, so I can see what the overall scenes count is and what the count is on the object I'm currently working on. So Samet's asking, so something like the Temple of Sigmar from Vermintide 2 would work. 1 second, I'll search it. Oops, your can't spell. Been a while since I played Vermintide. And these are not in-game. Yeah. Just don't send me video files for your reference. Yep. Just screenshots if you would. Or if you've got it recorded in OBS, yes, Samet, please send me screenshots. Because I'm not finding anything. Please. I'm not looking for reproductions of these environments. You guys just aren't at that skill level yet. I'm looking for you to see a series of objects in an environment that can be made from repeating pieces, and then modeling out those simple objects in a 1600 try count budget, and then using them to populate around the scene. Yep, encouraged. So now that I've got the basic shapes in, and realistically I should hit this with a symmetry. Y-axes, there they are. So now if I go perspective mode and start walking around. So right now I'm viewing the inside of the church. I'll pretend this is a church. I'm looking at the inside, or the negative side, of all of my geometry. It's the same thing if I go into my round temple over here. So once you have the pieces in, there's two ways to flip the geometry around. You can either go element mode, so either element or polygon mode. Grab the polygons that you want to flip inside out, and there's a flip command. Again, if everything's instanced, what you do to one will happen to the others. Same thing with this guy. Although instead of going into sub-object mode, and this is bad, I didn't rename it. This should be wall 001 or wall in Windows 001. That operation to flip polygons inside out is also a modifier by itself. So when I was adjusting the obelisk earlier in the pre-stream preamble, a lot of the commands inside of Edible Poly exist by themselves inside the modifier list. So in this case, I'm trying to flip the mesh inside out. Whenever you're talking about inside versus outside, you're talking about the mesh's normals which direction it's facing. So if I go into the modifier list and type in normal, or November Oscar Romeo, just NOR, as soon as I add it in, it'll automatically flip your mesh inside out. So it's a little faster than going into Editable Poly, selecting all this stuff, using the flip command. You can just use the modifier itself. So now I can go walk around mode. And everything looks correct. Same thing over here. Okay. So give me 1 second, I'll make a mistake or I'll make an error in here which would require me to fix it. So I'm just looking at the Vermintide pictures. All right, give me 1 second. Yeah, this would work. Temple of Sigmar. Okay, I remember this. The scale itself, so like not the complexity, but how many pieces are required to make this. The scale's really big, but as long as you don't go crazy on your wall pieces. So I'll just do some really quick mesh draw overs. So this would be wall piece 1. And then you've got the little alcove or inset, whatever you want to call it. I'm just going to do an additional edge loop on it so you can see where the geometry is going. So that would be piece 1. This would be piece 2. Again, sorry for the shit line quality. That would be piece 2. Can't tell if that's a third piece. Yeah, it is. That would be piece 3. And then just repeat those across. Like, don't go crazy with your wall variations. So just repeat them. So it'd be blue, pink, back to yellow. Looks like it goes back to pink again. Just do that sort of thing. And then reuse those same pieces that you used at eye level for these areas. Because it looks like it's got 3 tiers to it. So, you know, 3rd floor, 2nd floor. This is with the mouse, by the way. 2nd floor, 1st floor. Don't change up what geometry you're using. Just reuse these pieces over and over again. Otherwise, you'll be sinking too much time into it. Perfect. Yeah, you're good then. Fire. Yes. customize user interface. And again, it's changed 2021 versus 2020. When you bring up customize user interface, it'll bring you to the keyboard binds, which is now its own menu for some reason. In the lower left, you'll have a list of all the commands that Macs can interpret. Just click anywhere inside that list and type in REP. So your menu will look much like this one. It's just, again, they put it into a separate window. REP. And what you're looking for is repeat last without any parentheses after it. So a repeat last global as opposed to repeat last poly. So you would find repeat last. There would be a hotkey field in the upper right. Hit spacebar. It'll let you know that by default, spacebar is bound to toggle locked selection, which is already part of the UI and not nearly as often used as repeat last. So spacebar, assign, and done. Yep. It's customize, preferences, and then under files, it's the fourth option, increment on save. So right now when you hit Control S, it doesn't save out a new file iteration. My suspicion, and I'm not 100% sure on this, something else that we changed with the hotkeys is under or inside the hotkey list, if you change your groups over to the UV editor, so unwrap UVW, this is true in 2020 and 2021. Where is it? Towards it. Bottom. Right here. Sorry, it's not true for 2020, but no, it is true for 2020, 2020 and 2021. Inside the unwrap UVW group or hotkey group, underneath snap toggle, it actually binds itself or is automatically bound to Control S. So I'll show you what happens. Yeah. So I have unwrap UVW active. I don't have it open, like my UV editor isn't open, but it is active. It's the last modifier in my stack, and I'm currently in an object with the unwrap UVW on it. As I hit Control S, so you obviously can hear me hitting my keyboard, nothing is happening to my file number. It's not saving out an iteration. It's not even saving. Because what it's actually doing is I may be over here in Control S without the UV editor window open. Even though it's not open, it's still toggling this on and off. So you actually have to take off that hotkey bind. Either take it off or just remember that when you're unwrapping something to get out of the modifier list. So modifier list, nothing selected. No. Basically, it's no worries. It's just a hotkey conflict. Again, why they would have Control S, bound to a hotkey when it's actually part of the file handling hotkeys. I don't know, but so I just go move, done, yep. And now it doesn't matter if I have unwrap UVW on or not. It's going to give me my iterations. So I am going to get to dealing with misses or seams in your environment in one quick second. Just going to explain the difference between copies or clones versus instances. So this is an instance. We know because it's written in bold. Even if I didn't have unwrap UVW on it, its default state or its lowest modifier is still bolded out. So editable poly. That means as soon as I make adjustments to a sub-object or a modifier. So right now, if I scale this thing up and down, nothing changes, nothing cares. If I select a bunch of vertices and start scaling up and down, now it cares, because I'm actually doing something inside the modifier. World rotation, world scale, world position, doesn't care. Sub-object or modifier adjustments, those copy. So when it comes time to unwrap this, I can unwrap it. So I'll just do a really crap job of it. So it is technically unwrapped, as in it's been flattened. But because each of these is an instance, and all that unwrapping was done through the modifier, if I go to any of them, not only are they unwrapped, but if I have a texture ready, or if I make a texture to apply on this piece of wall or this section of wall, I'll be texturing all 5 pieces of the building at the same time. So you effectively cut your work down to a fifth or 20%. So anytime you see repetition, that's always a good opportunity to start using some version of modular design. Making pieces and assembling the pieces together to get the final object, rather than modeling the entire full object from scratch. Get them like this. Sure. So the slow way I did it was, again, as long as it's divisible by, like, as long as I didn't have an odd number of faces or an odd number of polygons. So I think I started with 36 and these ones, like where these two meet, I'm about to fix that. Oh, like the floor doesn't go into the wall piece? No, it doesn't here either. So this is basically the same situation as the wings on the Normandy. So if you had, you know, the Normandy's body, and then there's the wing, it would be pretty perfect. I'm just going to repeat that for the stream. So you got it exactly. In order to get the form flush against the surface like it would be in real life. Again, well, sorry, not again, but we're working with, you know, a lot of cheats. As long as you can't see the seam or see a gap between the wing and the main body, that's all you're looking for. So having a little intersection between the two is perfect. And like you just said, that means that any polygons that you don't see will never be seen, or there are some polygons that will never be seen. All they're doing is throwing out your poly count, plus causing you to unwrap and potentially texture something that will never be shown, ever. Just delete them. Same idea. So I've got all my wall pieces. I'm just going to make a little mistake in here. So I went ring connect, and say I had a little bit of a mouse slip or whatever. And I'm actually going to use this to make another way of replicating all these things around. So my edges aren't lining up perfectly, obviously. So what I can do is, if they are instanced, so each of these is the exact same thing as the others, what I can do to repair that is, I know this edge is straight. It's this edge that's borked or broken. So I'll collapse stack on it, or I'll click make unique. That'll make editable poly in standard Arial font again, so it's no longer bolded. Any kind of sub-object change I make to it won't affect the others. I'll just turn on 3D snaps, so S, and then I'll just snap that versi to the wall it's supposed to connect to. That's it. So now I've got a unique piece that's correct, and I've got 4 instance pieces that are garbage. All I would do is delete the damaged ones, and instead of duplicating this repeatedly, number one, I would want a copy over here or an instance over here again. But I could either, make the duplicate. I need 5 copies. Just cloned it. I'm holding down shift. Yep. So could do that, and they line up perfectly. There's another tool that you can use, which I'll be using more extensively with the assets, but I'll show it to you now instead. So you can go Tools, and then click Array. So there's Mirror from up here. But Tools, if I click Array, don't let all the numbers intimidate you. It's basically just asking or allowing you to make an iterative duplicate. So I'll just show you how it functionally works. So I'm looking to create a cylindrical structure. So I'm not moving, I'm not scaling, I'm just rotating. So right away I'm only concerned with these values. So I only care about rotation. I'm not trying to make a stairway or something. I know that I want this room to be a fully enclosed cylinder. So I want it to cover 360 degrees. So rather than increments, I'll click the arrow to the right to make my totals. So my total rotation active. And then I'm just rotating 360 degrees on Z. So over 360 degrees, it's going to duplicate mesh for me. What type of duplicate do I want? Do I want copies where I can affect one and not affect the others? Kind of defeats the point. Do I want a reference, which I'll be getting to later on? In this case, I just want them to be an instance. Whoops. Ish. So in that case, you could still do totals, but you would need to know the distance of the pieces that you're working with. So I'll do it. Only if it's still a box. If it's still a box primitive and you haven't converted it to editable poly, it'll still have its length, but I'll show you a way to do it in a second. So totals, Z. If you don't want to do the math, like if you don't know how many edges or how many degrees this chunk is, which again is why I chopped it out of a larger cylinder in the first place, just hit preview. So this is 10 instances of what I started with, rotated evenly over 360 degrees. As I dial that count down, there's my perfect set. If I keep going lower, so it's 120 degrees, instance, 120 degrees, instance, 120 degrees, my original. So this is really handy if you need to populate something in a radial pattern, which I will be doing in a second. For now, I just go 5, hit OK. Yep. Yep. All of them. So another way that you can, rather than having the entire thing built out and chopping it up into pieces, if you just made a piece of wall like this, and you didn't know exactly how long you wanted it to be, you just wanted to start building out, you would pretty much do the exact same thing that we did with the racetrack pieces. So you would turn on your 3D snaps, you would mouse over one of the back vertices to get that little yellow crosshair, hold shift, and as you bring your mesh towards the quote-unquote front, you're snapping to all the vertices along the end or along the line, and then release. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, of a human. Yeah. The occupant is 1.8 meters. Yep. So so like a church with a dais at the end of it. The dais would either have to be unique geometry, or option B would be to get a cylinder. Make sure that, again, its sides are divisible by 4. In this case, sorry, not just divisible by 4. In this case, it could just be an even number so that you could then cut it in half. Give me 1 second. So you would then do something like this. So again, I didn't do a good job planning this because 10 pieces or 10 polys. So I would select 2, delete the rest, go into parent. Why is it not letting me switch? There we go. Oops. This would be better. Yeah. So again, you'd be able to duplicate it out quickly and then start doing subdivisions, do your insets. Actually, I'll do one up here. Inset. Make some windows. Ooh, okay. That's a big chunk to bite off. Yeah. Yeah, go online for your reference. If you haven't been... Or you can just watch a Let's Play and grab some screenshots from it. Okay. So just one little more tool, since I mentioned I'd point it out. Inside the Utilities menu, fourth from the top is a measurement tool. And that will give you rough measurements. So 6 by 11 by 10. Or you can also go into the Creation tab. This is actually the one I use more often, because this one can be a little flighty. If you go into the where the dummies are, the dummies and helpers, so helper tools, tape, just turn on your snaps and click from one vertice to the other. Length 6 meters. So now I've got all my pieces in, they're all instanced, they're all named, thank God. But even with smooth turned on, I've still got seams. So you can see a hard edge right here, hard edge here, hard edge here, blah, blah, blah. In between each of the pieces. Only because it's a radial formation. On the ceiling, if I was doing the Pantheon, it wouldn't be as big a deal. Because presumably once my ceiling pieces have been instanced in, grow, delete everything else. This time I'll actually do tools array. So 360 degrees, preview, up, 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 up. So not good math. We've got some overlap, which I would need to repair. Flip my normals inside out. With the pavilion, it's not such a big deal, because after all of your pieces are instanced into place, you're probably going to do something along the lines of inset, not outset, sorry, inset by polygon. And that's going to give you the sort of hole punches, or that pineapple grenade appearance. So you won't see the hard edges or the breaks between the individual ceiling pieces because the angle is hard already. On this one, because the wall piece is overlapping, yes. The only way to get rid of this, yep. Nope, please don't do characters. Okay. So there is a way to get rid of this. It's not a very clean way. It's adjusting the vertice weights to change its shading. Easier way to deal with it is, like everything in 3D, hide it. So I'm going to grab a cylinder. I'm going to make a cylinder that sits right on where that seam is. So this could be a column. Pretty sure I misspelled column. Grab my bore edges. Remember your environment, so your walls, ceiling, floor has no poly limit to it, as long as you're not being overly inefficient with it. Give it some sim. Yep. Yep. It sounds like it's basically this. So if I wanted to hide all these seams, rather than, and again, there'd be nothing wrong with doing it this way, it's just slower. I could grab this, this pillar, turn my snaps back on, hold shift, bring it over to this guy, instance, bring it over, whoops, slightly off my target. Snap, snap. Snap, snap. Snap, snap. Done. All my seams are hidden. Plus I've got a little bit more information for the wall pieces. Or if I get rid of these, if I wanted to use array to do the same thing, because this is a radial room, I'm going to be relying on that vertice right in the middle repeatedly, like right now. Because array needs to be working with the object's pivot point, I'm going to go effect pivot only. Snaps get turned on again. Pivot gets moved to that pole. Tools, array. There's my 5 instances sitting right on the edges, so they're all equidistant. Or if I want to add in a little bit more detail or a little bit more structure with this, could dial it up to 15. It looks like I'm getting really close to having this look like it's actually meant to be part of the room. So I would leave it. Go back to my little master copy over here of my wall pieces. And just scale them in a little bit, so that their edge is sitting right behind my pillar. Maybe a little too far on that one. So just scaling in a little bit. So now when I'm flying around, actually it looks like it's supposed to exist that way. Ceiling, I'll do the same thing. Sphere, scale it up. Again, divisible by 4, so I'm going to go 32 will work. Add poly. Take off the bottom half. While I'm here, I may as well flip it so it's inside out. Scale, 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 scale. Grab my pieces. And then go array. And bring my master copy over. So, roof master, column master, which I can actually move its pivot point back. Roof master, wall master, column master. Anything I do on one copies to the rest of them. So I start walking around. That's it. Again, once you find a nice shot of your environment, Control Shift C. What's the Control Shift C again? 3. Control Alt Shift C. Just so you don't end up with an exposure offset. You've got your camera. And you can go through making more adjustments to hide your transition between wall and ceiling. So this would be where the cylindrical or cylindrical room is a little harder than a rectangular one. Sorry, an example of a rectangular, example of the rectangular room aside from a hallway. I think one of the examples I gave you guys, one second, I'm actually not on Fan Trial Online, believe it or not. So not rectangular, but it's an L shape to the tavern in Goldshire. So this is the Homeworks 2 sample.png from the Homework 2 folder. This one's rectangular. Just take an estimate as to how big your room is going to be. Like absolute rough estimate. So say I want it to be, I don't know, 40 meters, sorry, that's a little too big. 30 meters and not much wider than a person's shoulders. So like a tight fit. So one of your directions, say 2 meters. And if it's going to be something really narrow, maybe 3.5 meters. fairly low ceiling, so 2.5 meters. So now it's 3.5 by 2 by 2.5. This is stuff that we'll do later on actually, but since you asked. So this is wall. Convert to editable poly. Take the front and back off. And then I said 30 meters, right? So if this is 2 meters each, make a duplicate. I want 14. So the 14 copies plus my original, 15. Total sections of hallway, each 2 meters, 30 meters long. Yep. That's fine. As long as they're instances of one another, you can change. If you change one, you change them all. That's all I need. Yep, you're good. So a lot of useless geometry, but it's like moguls down the hallway. So as you're making all these pieces, obviously you're going to want to keep duplicating off to the side. I'll turn on my back face cull so I can actually see inside this bloody thing. Object props, back face cull. I'd want to do the same thing with this banister or this crown molding piece. So get the visible by 4. I don't need any height segments for what I'm doing. So I'll just call it crown molding. I think there's actually a U depending on if you spell it British or American. Yeah. Because it's an interior. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Oh, I deleted it just so I could show the sort of cathedral dais. But yeah, this would be capped off. So this is my crown molding. Again, make my master copy of it. Sorry, master instance of it. Select it, modify. Sorry, tools rather. Array. Preview. So that now if I start making adjustments to one of them, because admittedly they're kind of boring, and go inset. Sorry, not extrude, bevel. Again, since it's instanced, copies across all of them. So really plays back into your efficiency. Essentially modeling an entire environment with only 1/5 of the work. So going way back to what Nikolai was asking about. Give me 1 second, because I accidentally left the room. So certain objects, for example, I'm going to do some really basic cloth. So I want to have an altar somewhere in here. There we go. You're holding it. You're holding them down. You're holding down those keys rather. So it's the walk symbol. You're in the viewport and you're holding WAS or D, and nothing's happening. So what does your cursor look like right now then? So is the reticle like I have? Up here at the top? I don't know what the hotkey to, well, there's the hotkey right there. Alt Shift Control X. Turn that guy, make sure that's on. It's a hotkey override, which I never use. So I'm going to do a really basic altar, and then I'm going to drape some cloth on it without using a simulator. No, replace them with something. Yes, please replace them with something. So I'll make a... What's that, sorry? If you have a height reference in scene, so this little measuring stick or cube, that's why I've determined the height of my person to be, or the height of my occupant. So in walkthrough mode, just use E and C to set your height, because that's float up and float down. So just get to eye level. So I'm just making, like I said, simple altar. Very good. Make sure you're in perspective. Do you see the hand as the third icon from the right on the bottom row? Underneath the hand. So, insanely simple altar. If you hand me something like this, your only feedback on that asset's going to be, yeah, it could be a table, but it's not much removed from the actual primitive with a couple extrusions on it. So I'm going to slowly bump this guy up. And that's the wrong altar. A-L-T-A-R. So as long as your original number was divisible or evenly divisible, like if you had 15 size to the room or 15 size to the original cylinder, oh, then you just snap them. So you had something like this, turned your snaps on, and went shift, snap, sorry, shift, click, drag, and over. Marquee line. Marching ants line. No worries. So if it's a matter of your or assuming it's just the angles that you're rotating them at, rather than if you had started with a 15 size cylinder and then you took off 4 polygons as your chunk. Come here. So 15 obviously not evenly divisible by 4. No matter what you do, you're not going to be able to get a continuous form from it, or at least not a continuous form and without gaps. So just not happening. Array is going to be the easiest for cylindrical room. 3D snaps is going to be the easiest for a rectangular or rectangle based room. Tools and array. Go down to rotate, click the right, the greater than sign to the right of rotate, enter in 360 degrees for Z, and then hit preview. Then for type of object, you want instance. And then by adjusting your count underneath array dimensions, that'll allow you to get your pieces to fit together. So I'm going to do a really simple version of cloth, since I know there's going to be people with tablecloths. In this case, it's an altar cloth. So I'm just going to start with a plane. It's a 4x4 plane, so 3 subdivisions down the middle. And I'm just going to scale out those center vertices. They're roughly the size of my altar in this case. Take the bore edge and just drop it. So it does leave you with some very, very bad non-planars. So you can see the silhouette being held, but there's no actual edge. In this case, it's the other way around. You have an indentation because it is following, or it's following an implied edge in the other direction. Just grab the 2 vertices, connect, connect. And that's repairing the non-planar face. Sorry, which would be too many tries. I'm at 12,000 in scene. That's why I like having them both, so I know how much I'm going to be killing my system. So anytime you have a hard edge and you want to make it smoother, don't go mesh smooth. It'll just re-subdivide your entire object. If there's a specific edge that you want smoothed out, select it, chamfer it. So I selected the corners on the table or on the altar cloth. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I selected the 4 edges that go around the top of the table surface. So 2, 4, 6, 8. Chamfer them all at the same time. Gives me this really nice, smooth and soft bend on the silhouette. Now, if you wanted to argue, if this was satin or silk, that angle would be a lot smoother. If it was something rough like sackcloth or wool, it'd be a lot larger. I'm not expecting you guys to take that sort of stuff into consideration. Just give it some curvature. So, starting to get a better silhouette. I can now run some subdivisions along the sides. So, grabbing all the edges down the sides by either marquee selecting or selecting one, hitting ring. One ring. It's because I got all these triangles in here that I can't do a basic ring selection. Connect. And now to get some nice flow to it, I'm going to give it a little bit more geometry first. So I'm creeping a little higher than I'd want to. I'm at 300 already, but so I'm about to make a little bit of a drop cloth to us, or like a drop form to the cloth. I don't want to touch any of the vertices that are more or less hanging on the corners or touching the corners of the table. I'm going to grab everything else and using either soft select or, again, I'm a huge fan of FFDs. I'll go grab a 4x4 maybe and just make adjustments to them. Probably could have used a 3x3 for this, but yeah, I'm going to use a 3x3. Way faster. Modifier list and type in FFD, Foxtrot, Foxtrot, Delta. So, silhouette, 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 silhouette. Making something interesting. As long as you don't do anything too outlandish, don't worry about, getting a perfect drop pattern or V folds, cross folds, all that sort of stuff. Realistically, you would want to do that inside of ZBrush rather anyway. You can start playing around with your form, play around with your shapes a bit. There's my cloth. Could probably give it a little bit more pinch down the middle. There we go. Maybe a little too much pinch. That works. Again, just some low poly cloth. No simulator needed. Lots of control. So now I'm going to finally go back around to who was it that was asking me? To what Nikolai was asking. So if you had a bunch of gemstones sitting on top of this, would this count as would that count as an asset by itself? And the answer would be no. Because if I were to do a quick gemstone, so there's a bunch of ways of cheating gemstones, which are actually kind of fun. Here's a sphere. I'll cut down the number of the faces on it using an optimize. Yep, I saw it. So if I did something like this, Apple poly. Smooth. Sorry, just making sure I've got all the other stuff too. You can leave it as a plane. So even if you had a gemstone setting on this, which is essentially what you have in your reference image, so I'll just show it. So I know it's not realistically a setting, it's more of like an embellishment or whatnot on each of the stones. Number one, it still doesn't have any kind of form that would require 1600 tries to do, because you can actually see some of the geometry in it just because, you know, Temple of Time, old game. Sure, give me 1 second. So that's maybe 200-ish, that area. Correct. But caveat, or proviso, conditional clause. So an example that I typically use when students are working on these assignments is, sorry, getting back in the channel. So I have you guys doing 6 different assets. Give me 1 second to quickly model this out. Why are you being a punk? Right, because this stupid stuff doesn't work like that. There we go. This is by far the worst fork I have ever done. It is a long fork, but the tines are the wrong length, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so sometimes what I have students do is go mesh smooth. They'll say, hey, you know, this is 888 tries without the caps on. This is my asset. Maybe throw on another mesh smooth on there or something. This is my asset. And I'll say, cool, it's a fork. Yeah, I know what it is, but really, can you populate with that? Is that gonna add anything to the environment by having it placed multiple times? I mean, realistically in scene, it's going to be like this. Even if you have a place setting of 12 or something, it's really not going to have an appreciable return on the scene. Some people do need or do have scenes where tableware is something that's a part of the context or a part of, you know, the setting. In that case, and only in that case. So remember the entire example of the velvet rope queue where I said you'd need both poles and the rope in between to count as one asset? This would be the same idea. You could do and so this is going back to what was being asked about those jewels. You could do an actual, you know, candelabra or whatever. Let's do it this way instead. Rendering, turn on. Group. Obviously my mesh count is going to be way too high for what it is, but demo. I'm going to quickly use a tool that I'm going to be teaching you guys with subdivision modeling. Or not, apparently. Doesn't want to work, apparently. Or is it because I'm in border edge mode? Oh. Okay. Wants to be that way. So you'd have your candelabra done far more efficiently than what I'm doing right now. That's part of your place setting. But then you would also have a plate. Then you would have your fork. Then maybe a spoon or a butter knife or a knife of some sort. Now you're starting to get some silhouette out of it. And this is still under 1600. Like, well, I didn't expect it to stay that low right now, but... And this is still 1600. These... Correct. All of them together count as one asset. Because individually, they don't have proper context, they don't have enough structure, they don't have enough silhouette strength. Considering all of them together as a cluster asset is the term that I use. Now you can go bow, 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 off the table. Sorry, ask your question. Okay. Mm-hmm. Oh, so you don't want the indentation on the side of the wall from the window anymore, basically? Okay, 1 second, I'm going to duplicate what you have. Use connect settings, slide in. So it's not exactly what you have, but you end up with this extra piece of geometry raised up. The easiest way to deal with it, especially if you're still at this stage where stuff just needs to fix together and you're just adding in detail to it, to get rid of this curvature or this extra extrude, either A, select the extrude or the outermost face of the extrude, hit grow once so that now you have the cap of the extrude plus the size that were created, delete. Then select the two border edges and bridge them. And then you can delete that extra edge that was left behind. That'd be the easiest way. So the head is the asset because that's what you're populating with. That's the entire unit that you're duplicating with. That's the asset. Yeah, of course. Not only can you, but you should. So worst example for this, but if the place setting was my asset, you know, having a place setting up on the banister or crown molding doesn't make sense, but it's getting more mileage out of the asset rather than having just one single time that it appears. So there's my altar. Again, the candelabra plus the plate plus the fork plus a spoon or knife, that would be one asset. Or I could say, this is my one asset, everything that's currently visible. Or since I have the geometry for it, and since it directly relates or correlates to one of the assets that you see in the reference images, obviously I would need to chop down the number of sides on those candelabras, but this could be considered one single asset. Just remember that you have to, at some point, preferably sooner rather than later, make duplicates of your assets and put them off to the side. So there's my two assets. There's one of my ceiling pieces. Or that's my master ceiling piece, my crown molding rather. Master pillar, master roof, master wall. And then you can just keep going from there. So in the end, you'd be able to hand off, not that I want you to at this point, but later on when you guys are working in groups on games, you'll have, I think it's 5 teammates. Each of the team members, so all 6 people, makes an asset pack and then shares it with one another. So each person does 2 types of wall, each person does 2 types of ceiling. You exchange. Now you've got 12 pieces of wall to work with, 12 pieces of flooring, 36 assets that you can populate with. Makes the work a lot faster, and it also keeps the style very consistent because everyone's using the same stuff. So I know that you guys have probably already used it, but just to reiterate on using the lathe command. So I did those cylinders just by doing simple extrudes. If I wanted something a little fancier, going into the line primitives or spline subobjects, spline primitives, go line, and just build out the overall silhouette of one of your pillars. And mine's still showing rendered edges and scene. Ignore it. So just draw the profile line. This should be this corner. Just going to shrink my Bezier handles a bit. Just draw the silhouette of it. Go into the modifier list, LAT, and lay that out. Just make sure that it's not inside out. Obviously, a nice thing about using the lathe command, you can just go to Align Subobject, make your adjustments. That would be your master. And just start to dig in. So definitely out of scale, but you get the idea. There we go. So just doing some basic hanging cloth. Literally the same idea with the table. Get your basic shape in first. Once your basic shape is in, do a little bit of subdivision so that it can divide a little more easily. Probably have too much geometry there, but I'm just playing around. Sim. There we go. Definitely too much geos out. Like an ancient Roman wedding feast or something. Ooh, good call. And I'm right on the dot again, 1600. So yeah, there's three of my six assets. Or there we go. 2 of my 6, plus the thing that I was mauling the other day. Which apparently I can't find. Correct. Yep. I'd much rather see 6 really well done assets than 10 done assets. So there you go. There's my asset list. Half of it, or half of the required. Be kind of nice to get a little bit more mileage out of this. So again, don't feel limited to duplicate what you see in your references or anything like that. So grab this guy, rotate 120. 120. And back to my camera. This definitely needs to be cleaned up, but you get the idea. And I could use those same assets on my square building. So this entire idea of having the overall shape, breaking it down into something simple, or breaking it down into a segment, duplicating the segment instead of the whole shape so that you can do half the work, 1/5 of the work, an 1/18 of the work, or taking an object and making variations on it to get the most out of your poly budget, and also for the ease of use. That's basically foliage. So what I typically do when I'm doing basic trees, basic low poly trees, and again, this is something that you guys will be doing later on, rather than looking at, rather than looking at something like this and justifiably freaking out because, oh my god, that's a lot of stuff. As someone said last class, break it down into simple chunks. Make a branch. Not even a branch, make a stick. I'll take my sides down to 8 here. Make a stick. Make said stick look like a stick. So gradual taper in size from base to tip. Throw in some curvature to it. Once you have a stick, and hopefully have some 3-dimensional movement to it, or movement on all 3 axes. This is why I don't have you guys doing organic stuff until much later. It's hard enough keeping track of things on X and Y. Keeping track of things on X, Y, and Z is it's not impossible, obviously, but it's harder. Once you have one, make a couple more. Make variants. Change length. Change their size. Change how often they turn, how often they curve, how sharp the curve is. Once you have a couple sticks, rather than mauling everything again from scratch, duplicate. Start recombining things. So my last two branches get shrunk and placed onto my first. My first and second branch get duplicated and put onto my third. Here's something that fell off a tree in the forest. Exactly. No. Nope. Nope, keep them planar. Single-sided, non-volumetric geometry. Looking good, Max. So once I have Gen 2 of my branches, so there's Gen 1 where it's just a twig. There's Gen 2 where I've just duplicated Gen 1 onto Gen 2. Gen 3 is exactly what you'd expect. copying Gen 3 and placing it on each other. So duplicate, give it some rotation, give it some spin. Duplicate. So you never model more than, in this case, you never model more than 3 cylinders. But based on how you rearrange them, how you rescale them, how you position them, combine them, you can actually get something pretty good. So this kind of falls in line with what someone was saying in the Discord the other day, talking about one button results inside of Blender. Yeah, it's true that there's a lot of plugins available for Blender and a lot of scripts. I wouldn't say if it's more or less than Max, but there's certainly a much wider scripting base for Blender than there is 3ds Max. But before you guys get too crazy about plugins, so since I'm doing a tree, I'm thinking, or the plugin I specifically have in mind is SpeedTree, which is a procedural foliage generator, which is quite good. Tree generators or SpeedTree? Yep. So don't get me wrong, I don't have something against plugins. My only caution to people, especially students when they're starting out, is be careful becoming overly reliant or being of the mindset of, you know, I don't really need to know how to do this because there's a plugin that does that. At the very least, have the underlying knowledge of how the plugin works and how you would do it without the plugin. Because thinking in a employment situation, either as a subcontractor, contractor, you know, member of studio sort of thing, if your lead wants you to do a tree and you guys have been using SpeedTree up to that point, and you know there's a hardware bug or there's a program update or for whatever reason SpeedTree is no longer working, what do you say to your boss? What do you say to your client? Oh, sorry, I can't do it because this program's not working right now. Typically that won't fly. I'd be fairly confident to say that that will never fly. I'll be like, okay, do it another way then. Don't use SpeedTree then. So start building stuff out by hand, or be able to build it out by hand. Because sooner or later, just like Max, everything breaks. And if you become overly reliant on plugins, number one, kind of stymies your ability to get work done in case something happens to a plugin or script. And number two, you don't really learn anything. So plugins should always be a way to automate something that you can already do. It should never quote unquote do it for you. So like if you have a plugin that can use your geometry and generate a smoke cloud from it, undeniably cool. But if you show that to your boss and they're like, okay, but rather than smoke, can you make it flies? Like it's just a massive flies that take off. If all you know is the plugin, you have to wait until the plugin gets updated with flies. If you know that, more than likely it's using a particle system with instance geometry, sourcing UVs from source object, randomized noise path, plus a couple of effectors. Then you can alter it, replicate it, modify it however you want. If all you know is the plugin, you're kind of SOL. That is my spiel. So yeah, can't really talk about modular generation or modular design without talking about trees. So I'm actually going to clip and archive this because we are going to come back to it later on. You guys will be doing trees and then I'll be having you take them into ZBrush for some sculpting. And it's the same idea. Once you have a palette, and I color coded all the branches so you can see them being used repeatedly. The only mistake I made is that number one, nothing's named. Number two, nothing's instanced. So I would have to unwrap all this uniquely, which would obviously take a hell of a lot of time. I wouldn't even bother attempting it. I just redo it from scratch. Yep, it's actually the right-click object properties menu. So select the object that you want to turn inside out. Yep. Which semicircle? Oh, this part? So I'll do it a little bit more accurately. So starting with the base object, I'm going to try and get it as close as possible by eye, and setting the number of size to something that ideally is divisible by 4, if not something even. Give it some height. Over to an editable poly and take off the pieces that you definitely don't need. So like you said, it's a semicircle, half circle. So leave one whole side. I should have taken my height segments off too, but whatever. In order to get it perfectly snapped to your existing geometry, you can go vertice. I'm going to grab the entire top loop, snap, and snap one side to the other, or sorry, this top piece of this cylinder to the side of the walls. As long as there's a vertice, you can snap to it. I just don't know why it's not letting me snap. No, oh, because I only had one axis turned on. So there you go. Over and over. And then go to the side. Bang. No. No, just make some... you could, but you would have to attach these together, and then that would defeat the purpose of keeping these as separate pieces. If all those pieces in between the pillars are instances, which they appear to be, that's not bad. No, it's working. I would put some windows in there just to break up the wall formation, but you've got the right idea. Yes. So sorry, you broke up after how to make a blank OT instance. Yeah. Instance is just what happens when you're in object level, so I'm not in a sub-object. And you start and you hold shift and drag out. Oh, then you would break it apart like I did with this originally. Or like what I'm about to do on the cylinder. That's literally what I'm about to do. And the floor doesn't need to be an instance. The floor is the only piece that can be one unique object. Hence why I have it still unique here. So, sorry, semicircle room or half circle room. Again, just do a quick count. In this case, even sides, 10. Limits how many sides I can have. It's either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 2. So I'll go 2 because I'm not feeling particularly lazy at the moment. Since I just got rid of 4, or 4 times the number of ones I kept, I got rid of 8 polygons. Hold shift. Rotate 36 degrees. And actually, I'd probably want to move the wall to this rather than this to the wall. Just makes it a little easier. So, add poly. Grab. Z to zoom to whatever's selected. There we go. That's how I made the sort of cathedral or the altar setting. So that's part of the reason why I suggested doing something a little more elaborate, or sourcing to something more elaborate, like a throne room, a temple, because typically they have all those cues in there for you to break it up already. Mm-hmm. So the easiest way would be split down the middle. So I'm just setting it up so that I can reuse a bunch of these sides over and over again. So say this one has a window in it. And say this one has a door. So rather than modeling it over and over and over again. So this is another wall with a window. I would detach this. Wall W window, or wall with window. Not as a clone. And then to replace that wall, I would just turn on snaps, hold shift, make sure that I'm not constrained. No, it works with anything. No. Oh, make sure that you're on all axes. Like find your manipulator handle and make sure that X, Y, and Z are all yellow. If only Y is yellow, you can only move it left and right. Or if only blue is active, or if only the blue Z handle. Okay. As far as their accuracy with the snapping, are you talking about the presence of gaps? How close am I going to be looking? Close. So there you go. There's some windows on the side wall then. Okay. Send me what you have to your Scratch folder. Yeah, toss them to me. Yep. I would drop the with me and today, and I would say that's completely accurate. Yeah. By the way, Samet brings up a good point in Twitch chat. I was going to do it later at the end of class, but I actually may as well do it now. Whatever file you're currently working on, so 3DCO Max, digital drawing, a file, just give her a toss in the attendance section 1 folder if you would. Currently I've got it set to end in... Yes, please. So, over the next, I'll pop up the time since I've been talking. Over the next 10 minutes, just pop a file, any file, into the section 1 attendance if you would, please. I'm not particular about how you name it because I'm starting to actually connect people's real names with their screen names, but if you would please name it either your Discord name, your Discord nickname, or your Twitch nickname dot whatever, and just throw it in there. And I will go to the Scratch folder. Yep, headed there now. Yep, that's why I have it set up that way. Yep. So Garrett, up at the top, I'm not seeing the... Typically, actually I should be testing this in 2019. But I'm pretty sure even on 2019, the cursor changes. Oh, sorry, 2020. To a circle, actually, when snaps are on. So double check that snaps is on. And once snaps is on, so S, right click on it and make sure that vertex is the only sub-object or the only target checked. That would be it, rather. Turn off grid points. So usually whenever I'm setting my own snaps, I just tell it to clear all because I don't know what else is clicked in any of the other sub menus. Just hit clear all, and then in standard, which you'll be in by default, turn on vertex and close the window. Shoot. Sorry, repeat that. Correct, last week. Yep, no worries. Yep. No, the 13 people who are currently missing from the stream are the ones who should be panicking. Yeah, that's why I do it. Nice. Yeah, that's nice. That would work. If you... If you want to get some really extra brownie points with me, so points that will get you absolutely no effect on your mark, search up interesting coral. So, oh, absolutely. So, like stuff like this. Rainbow Acropora. Love it. Or, or something like this. This is your brain. Grayscale. This is your brain on drugs. That picture. Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is good so far, Max, by the way. I didn't. I haven't capped it yet. I have not. With a with a sphere. So if you have like flat across the top or in a teeple. Oh. Just a box. Box or a plane. Yeah. Okay. So. I'm just kidding. Alright, so it isn't there in 2020. This needs to be not covered? Like open to the sky? I think that might be a bit of a reach. I'd say take artistic license and just cap it. Assuming that's above eye level, like assuming that your scale is something comparative to what I've got blocked in, take artistic license and just plain center minimum to maximum unsaid. Okay. Yeah, just cap it with a plane. Don't do anything too crazy with it. Once you have it positioned. Yep. Yep. Pretty much. Okay, so this is Cat's wall alignment issue. So go edit poly. Select both the top and bottom. So both poly or both vertices rather. Snaps on. Okay. There's overlap. Okay, so you're did you use the by hand duplication by holding down shift and dragging out clones, or did you use the array tool? Use the array tool first before you do anything else. It's once you have one section of wall, tools, and then array. Yep, 1 second cut. Array, and then rotate. Click the greater than arrow next to rotate. And for the total on the Z axis, turn on 360 degrees. And then just get your count to match. And for cat, just grab one set of vertices. So this is where your slip is. I currently have one side, like one set of vertices, top and bottom. and then zoom in on the top or the bottom one, and then just click and drag from the selection to where it should be lining up. Mm-hmm. Oh, your walls are overlapping with a rectangular? So my guess at that point is that at some point you accidentally skewed one of the vertices. So yeah, so watch here for a second. So you're looking to do like a more asymmetrical hallway where it's longer than it is wide. So if one of those vertices has been offset, or if one of those edges is no longer completely straight, if I try using snaps to duplicate, so holding down shift, vertice, vertice, now this is causing a gap. You said you had a bit of an overlap. So I'm assuming that your overlap isn't consistent. One area looks like it's perfect, and one area has the two polygons crossing one another. You think you slipped on your actual snaps? That's possible. That's fine. That's why working like this is so useful. You can make us all a bunch of mistakes, but you don't really end up doing any more work than duplicating. Right. So I would yeah, actually, I've got a little bit of time, so if you want to throw into the scratch, you can take a quick look at it. No worries. So, Kat, looking at your geometry, it looks like you had already started making some adjustments, because it looks like it. Because there's a gap that can't be taken out without taking off the instance properties. So since you're so early on, I would just say grab a new cylinder. Nope. Again, with the floor, I wouldn't go further with it than a flat plane. If I had... Right. One second, I'm just going to double check. Because you're doing the throne... Not throne. Oh, okay. Don't have any kind of change in level if you can avoid it. So it will require a bit of a cheat, but don't do this sort of thing. It's possible, don't get me wrong. It's not like it's difficult, it just adds another layer of complexity onto things. So if this was your floor, don't have a raised dais. Okay. How many sides were you working with? 12. And you're doing sets of 3, right? 3 polygons per 4. It doesn't matter. As long as it's evenly divisible, that's all you're really looking for. So, go Tools, Array, 360. No, that's pixel perfect. Oh, never mind. I have to, yeah, but look how close in I am. This is the maximum resolution for Max. I wonder if I could actually try and move something like this. Okay, this is not me snapping. This is because it's moving one of the minimum smallest max units at a time. Yeah, that's what you call small. Is it? I usually have light grouping things. Doesn't appear to be so. Oop. Mouse over. Nope. It's not giving me a hotkey. So regardless of which, what format your environment ends up taking, just keep some things in mind. Number one, work with instance geometry whenever possible. Like I said, with the floor, with the floor at least there's really no appreciable difference yet between what I just had. Should be 5, I think. Nope. And this. But there's a large difference between having all of this is one piece, because that's going to be a nightmare to unwrap, a nightmare to work with later, etc., etc. So make sure it's all instanced. As soon as you affect one or adjust one, it adjusts the rest. That goes for your assets as well. If an asset doesn't have enough silhouette strength or enough cause for geometry by itself, oops, what am I doing? There we go. Bam. If a piece of geometry doesn't have enough silhouette strength by itself, so those shields, for example, from the Viking village would be bad assets for this assignment. They're still just cylinders. They're too close to the original primitive geometry from which they were modeled, presumably. If that's the case, you can group objects together. So this would become a cluster. So 4 objects, 1 asset. Sort of like the velvet cube ropes. The rope or the hanging rope doesn't appear separate from the posts that hangs it up, or that hang it up. If an object's too simple, bringing on something that you can elaborate on its silhouette with. Ideally, using the same objects or the same asset palette repeatedly throughout scene, so that you're getting as much mileage from the time spent modeling as possible. So it's kind of a waste in this case with the... It's a bit of a waste to have only one instance or one time that the altar appears in scene. You know, you did all that work and it's only ever going to appear once, whereas with the pillars and the hanging cloth, with my flag standard / lamp, all of that stuff can be used repeatedly and should be used repeatedly in scene. And later on, this is what we'll be doing or working with. So the basics of modular design would be, or in terms of modeling, the basics would be the racetrack. This is the evolution from that. So using pieces to construct something very dedicated or much more unique. Hello, cat. And then this would be the final step. Past this, it would come into automation, scripting, that sort of thing. So that's it for today, for modeling. Remember, you guys are getting homework inside of texturing this week. So this tempo assignment is due on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Not tomorrow, a week from tomorrow at 3. And then the texturing assignment that I'm going to be giving you guys is going to be due on the 13th. So 24 hours plus a week after class. All you need to know for the texturing assignment is practice on your unwrap, follow along with what I do in class, and you're good. So, as far as the surface of the floor, no. It should be an instance, and I'd still recommend that you spend more time on stuff that's at or above eye level rather than what's below. Because remember, this is what the character or what a person typically sees when they're in a level. This is seen less often. This is seen less often. Let's write this. I think you're overthinking it a bit. Sounds good. So yeah, I'll let the stream run out for another 2 minutes, and then I'll close it, go have a cigarette, and then I'll be on Discord. So I'm going to set myself to invis on Discord. As soon as you see me visible, you can either message me then or leave me a Discord message. I have not yet. Shoot. It's object properties, but not see-through. It's backface call. Yeah. So all the geometry that I'm working with in this scene, all of the environment pieces that I'm working with in this scene are single-sided. So you can see the positive normals plus the negative normals. Backface call is going to set it so that the negative normals become invisible. So you would have to, for the ceiling, for example, it started with everything facing outward because it was originally a sphere. So you would grab all the polys, flip them, or use the normal flip normals modifier, then right click object properties and turn on backface call. Sorry, Leo, you cut out right after you said, would it be okay? And then I didn't hear anything. Yeah. Yeah. Is it like a couple second thing? Because I can do that before I go for a break. Yeah, okay.